Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekend for a free $200 credit.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Sign up for GoToMeeting using promo code TWiST to begin your free trial. And by Hiscox. Do you have the proper insurance for your startup? Get the right insurance right now with Hiscox. Tailored coverage starting at only $22.50 per month. Go to hiscoxusa.com/smallbiz to get a quote.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is This Week in Startups, the program where we talk about starting companies, being a founder, and how appropriate is it today that I have with me Adeo Ressi, the founder and CEO of the Founders Institute, which in the past 4 years has graduated over 800 startups. You heard that number correct, 800 startups in over 40 cities. It's the largest by far, accelerator, incubator, whatever you want to call it, in the world. And today he's going to tell us all the secrets to starting companies, to founding them, to succeeding, to failing. And he's going to tell us about his own entrepreneurial story, the wins, and a number of major losses. Stick with us. It's going to be a great episode.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups, the program where we discuss creating value in the universe. Yes, founding, starting, the act of creation, the act of making something that makes the world, the human race, just move forward a little bit better, a little bit more deft, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more fun. It's hard work. 8 out of 10 startups fail. 9 out of 10 startups fail. The majority of them fail. But the great news is that there are techniques that you can learn to minimize the chances of you being in the 7 or 8 out of 10 that fail and get into that magical group or 2 or 3 that scale, right? You don't want to fail, you want to scale. And that's what we talk about here. 350 episodes into This Week in Startups. And if you watch the first 100 episodes, frankly, I'm a terrible host. Had no idea what I was doing. The next 150, you can watch them. The last 100 I've been on. And I've been on because I got a great team here making the audio perfect, and we've been getting great guests. And today is no different. I have an amazing guest for you. Adeo Ressi is with us. He founded the Founders Institute 4 short years ago and has graduated over 800 companies in 40 cities. Welcome back to the program, Adeo Ressi.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, well, this has been a great episode. Well, listen, I mean, where to start with you is a difficult one, but we got to start with the Founders Institute, and then we'll go back into your history. What was the reason you created the Founders Institute? What was that moment where you said, this needs to exist in the world? Because, that's something I'm particularly obsessed with, is with an entrepreneur, with a founder. When does that switch just happen and say, this needs to exist in the world, and then you start trying to manifest your dreams into reality?
Yeah, so it was 2008, 2009. I actually remember the exact moment, but I don't remember the exact date. So I was like sitting in my den by the fire, so it was clearly in the winter period. And we were talking with a group of people who were helping to run The Funded, which was a website that I had founded to help CEOs rate venture capitalists. The market had crashed.
This is during the financial crisis.
Yeah, and Sequoia had just sent out that rest in peace,
Good times are over.
Yeah, and so, and they were over, right? And
the market lost half its value in 6 months.
Well, and at that particular moment, it was in free fall. So it was losing hundreds or thousands of points a day on the Dow.
And nobody knew where it was going to end.
No, it went all the way to like 6,000.
And people were speculating this could be a Dow 1,000, 2,000 type situation.
That would have been really bad.
Yeah.
And it was already really bad. So, and I was sitting there with a group of people running The Funded, and pretty much were like, wow, wait a minute. These CEOs are the type of people who should be in charge, right? And yet they're failing, and it's really hard for them, and they're getting taken advantage of, and it's just really awful for them. Meanwhile, the bankers and the politicians are like creating bubbles and, creating investment vehicles on investment vehicles on investment vehicles.
With massive leverage. That nobody can understand
they don't even understand. I knew one of my good friends was a derivatives guy, and he's like, I don't know how it works. I'm like, didn't you write the algorithms? He's like, well, sorta.
Yeah, it's like we're selling you a bundle of mortgages that were previously bundled together, and somebody else bought a bundle of mortgages.
They bundled on bundled on bundled, and they were selling the various and then it all fell apart. And meanwhile, like the people, as you said in the opening, who are creating the real value in the world are getting shafted. It seemed like they were at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
And these bankers were. It's like, oh, my Hamptons house. I have to sell my Hamptons house.
Right.
But my multi-million-dollar New York apartment, I'm gonna, retain.
I'll be okay. Yeah.
I'll be okay, right? And meanwhile, Sequoia's like, fire everyone.
Yep.
If you don't fire deeper, harder, faster, you're going to die. And I'm like, how does that make sense in the world, right? This is
not their advice, to be clear, because the advice was good advice if the funding environment was to go off for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah. I'm not debating the advice. They were right, actually. If you have any fat, you don't cut fat, you cut a little bit of meat.
Yeah.
Be sure that you don't leave any fat on the body. And that was good advice, but it was almost like counterintuitive in a broad sense, in that, those are the people who are creating the jobs. Those are the people creating the value. Those are the people who should have been hiring, not the other way around, divesting staff.
There was some anger or frustration on your part and the people you were talking with about this. I picture a bottle of Macallan 18 involved.
There might have been whiskey involved, but I was definitely frustrated and said, okay, we're going to do something about it. And we leapt into action literally and started brainstorming like what you could do. And so obviously the first thing you think about is like, all right, we were taking in hundreds of companies per day still at the time, registering for the funded membership. And so we're like, why don't we make like the funded for helping you be better, right? But the problem we saw is that like there was a lot of hair on the dog with those later stage companies. They had investors, they had employees, they had contracts and everything else. And if you really wanted to clean them up, you would essentially be spending a lot of time fixing previous mistakes before you could have them in a good enough spot to really grow. So then we said, all right, well, if that's going to be too hard, why don't we go earlier? And then we kept looking earlier and earlier and earlier. And, I was mentoring at Y Combinator and Techstars and other type programs. So I knew how they ran. And in my view...
And this was the early days of Y Combinator Techstars.
Oh, yeah, this was 2008.
They were a couple of years in,
2009.
Yeah.
And they were, I considered them to be too late as well, because by the time people went into those programs, they had teams, they had incorporation documents, they had a vision. And I said, look, if we can get really, really, really early, like right at the point when someone's like, I'm going to start this thing, then I can actually get them on a path without a lot of problems, so their likelihood of success is exponentially better than trying to fix something that has a lot of hair on it, a lot of problems later on.
When we get back from the commercial break, I want you to tell me about the first class and starting that and how you recruited and what it was like, that sort of seeing the debate, the anger, the frustrating conversation, in front of the fireplace, and actually turned into a product when we get back from these very important messages. Hey everybody, it's Jason. What an amazing interview we have today for you and a great episode. But I want to take a moment right now to thank one of our partners, GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. I use GoToMeeting all the time. Today, in fact, I had two meetings. One with WYSIWYG, which is the company which won the hackathon at launch. And then I had another one, which I can't tell you who it was, but it was a pretty cool meeting. And it was great. In the meeting, I was switching who was presenting. So they showed me some stuff. Then I put on my browser and I showed them some stuff. And then I gave it back to another person on the call, a third person. And everybody was in a different location. One person was actually in their car calling in on the phone line. Another person was on their laptop in a hotel room. And I was, of course, in my office. And I had them on a big screen TV with my headset on. All perfect clarity, perfect voice over IP, HD faces, gorgeous HD. And the product's great. It obviously works on Macs and PCs, but also on your iPad. And you can run the presentation and share what's going on your iPad on it. The product gets better and better. Every couple of months, they release some great new feature that I wind up using. In fact, you can record your meetings, which is another great feature. Let's say somebody can't make the meeting. You hit record, and you can keep that audio and then email it to another person. I've done that. Put it in a Dropbox and then save it for later if somebody missed the call. It's just a great company, and they've been a great partner for us. Go ahead and get a 30-day free trial by visiting GoToMeeting, clicking on the Try It Free button, and using the promo code TWiST, as in This Week in Startups. And they're also doing a great HD webcam giveaway. You know, the webcams that come with your computer generally are not HD. They're kind of a little crummy. So if you want to get a great, beautiful HD faces, HD webcam, go ahead and on your Twitter, answer the question, who would you like to have an HD meeting with and why? Right? So if you wanted to have it with me or Mark Cuban and why, just say why you would want to have this meeting and who you would want to have it with, and then use the hashtag #TwistWebcam. #TwistWebcam, and you can also put #GoToMeeting. We'll find that tweet because we're going to search for them every day, and we're going to pick the best ones to win one of 3 of these HD webcams, courtesy of GoToMeeting. The contest is going to end at midnight on June 6th. So just use that hashtag #TwistWebcam and tell us who you would like to take a meeting with and why. Thank you so much to my friends over at GoToMeeting, mostly because they make a product that I've used successfully for years, literally doing 10 meetings a week. Bryce can tell you he sets up all those meetings for me, and they all go flawlessly. Let's get back to this very awesome and amazing. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thank you to our sponsor for making this incredible interview with Adeo Ressi of the Founders Institute possible. You're listening to This Week in Startups, and I don't know why I'm talking like it's NPR, but I am. And so, Adeo, it's my NPR voice. When we left our hero, you had just... I can't do that for an extended period of time.
Please.
Please. When did it actually become reality? How did you recruit that first class? When did you get those first group of... And to be clear, you weren't looking for companies. You were looking for founders.
I was looking for, people. Well, you know, what was...
You were looking for bodies.
I was looking for humans, right?
Humans. A pulse.
So, right, but a pulse, that's fairly accurate. Well, it was really, this is one of the stories that probably don't get told very often, but are true in a strange way, in that I had flown down to Chapman University to give a talk, which is down here in Orange County. And I got off the plane, and some dude who was organizing the talk picked me up, who will remain nameless. And he's like, "What are you up to, Adeo?" And I'm like, I'm running the funded. Things are good. He's like, "What else?" I'm like, "Well, I'm working on this thing. It's like an incubator. I don't have a name yet. I'm thinking about it." And literally, that's pretty much very accurate. I didn't have a name. I had put some thought into it. I'd realized it was very early stage. I had been running some numbers on the model, but it was not ready to be talked about.
Not fully baked.
Good, far from fully baked.
It's basically a drunk conversation at 1 a.m. that now you're about to spill the beans on stage.
No, it wasn't that bad. We were far beyond that. But we were not, let's put it this way. This was March, and I was ready to, March 2009, and I was pretty much thinking that if everything went well, I would launch it maybe in September. So I get back, and I'm having lunch with someone at Coupa Cafe in Palo Alto, and an email comes in from your buddy Mike Arrington.
Oh yes, my
former
partner in crime.
If you
not
don't,
that crime. Keep going.
If you don't
another crime.
If you don't tell me about this new incubator you're about to start, I'm going to write a story in the next hour. So
classic Mike.
Opt in.
Yeah, it's classic Mike threat.
Opt in for feedback on the story. And he had CC'd the message that the guy who wrote in to tips@techcrunch.com, and there was no content in it. And I'm like, what the hell are you going to write? There's no content there. Dude starting incubator.
Dude considering starting incubator.
Right. There's no story. But
Sure.
I mean, the problem is, of course, you don't know what they're going to write. So it could have been like a lot worse than you giving them what you know. However, the problem was I didn't have a name. I didn't have like a lot of key things. So I'm at the lunch. I'm sitting there. I'm like, and so literally, like, I had enough to kind of take. So I literally am like, okay, meeting over. I got to go. Got in my car, drove home, called the reporter, and literally did the interview. And while I was being interviewed, I basically made a lot of the decisions up that now dominate the Institute to this day. Even better, I was on GoDaddy searching for domain names, and I literally registered the domain name. She's like, what's it called? I'm like, Founder Institute. And then they were publishing the article, and I'm like, no, don't publish it yet.
I have
the
to get my
domain
credit
isn't
card.
resolving.
Yeah.
And so they waited until the domain actually started resolving
nice
to
of them.
publish the. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to make it seem like what's even crazier about all that is that there were seminal decisions made kind of on the fly that to this day have proven to be very good.
What do you attribute that to?
Luck.
Luck or gut?
Luck.
Just
I mean,
luck.
a little bit. I mean, obviously they weren't. You look, I'm a smart guy. I'd thought about it. I'd thought about it on the fly. I didn't give curt answers. I literally considered what I said because they would ask a question. I'd be like, let me think about it. So some decisions came out. So decisions essentially at that point were made very fast, big decisions, because we had no time. Because then they're like, when are you launching? I'm like, May, which was in like a month. So we basically hauled ass from like a leak story to a launch program in 40 days. And so many of the decisions that have gone on to prove correct were made in a short period of time with limited or no information.
And
so it was in part very lucky.
In a way, as an entrepreneur, and I know I do this to myself sometimes, it's almost like you're so desperate to see what's in your mind exist in reality that you just create a forcing function.
Yes.
And in that way, it feels like you were creating a forcing function yourself. Like, I think I'm going to do this, but now if the press is on me and I name it and I set a May date, I'm going to have to do this.
Yeah.
Was that what you think you were doing, either consciously or unconsciously at that time?
Well, it was definitely not conscious or unconscious at that time, but I do use conscious and unconscious forcing functions all the time. In fact, I call that the push. And one of the principles of the Founder Institute is these forcing functions, both deadline driven. We try and like make people like get really worked up about incorporating. So it's like a big decision. Are you going to incorporate and really put your life on the line and quit your job and start the company? So we manufacture forcing functions at the Founder Institute. And I, as a successful entrepreneur, manifest forcing functions for myself. This was not one of them, though. This was like a douchebag down in OC who just leaked the story.
Leaked it. But hey, listen, you're gonna get your TechCrunch story, so you can't turn down the TechCrunch story, and you don't want the misinformation out there, so you want to control the message as best you can.
Yeah, it put me in a position where I had no choice, but I don't regret it at all, because I do think in hindsight, the worst thing that might have happened is if it never got leaked, I might have just continued to because I was living a great life. The Funded was killing it, and I didn't need to start something new at that point. But in hindsight, it all worked out for the best. So that's why I consider it luck, because sometimes a conscious, unconscious, deliberate, or indeliberate forcing function has a very good outcome. Most of the time, I would say.
And it's because decisions are being made that are forcing reactions.
Exactly.
Which is better than passivity and just sitting in front of your monitor putting in the next 10 lines of code.
Right. And so, even so we want to get to 65 cities this year, right? We're in around just under 50 right now. So I'd hope to get there by midsummer this year, because we're doing massive expansion in the Southern Hemisphere. And the second I saw that we weren't going to hit it by midsummer, but this is all artificial crap. We don't need to be in 65
No.
cities. Like, there's no reason we should target midsummer. It's just, we created the milestone. We created the...
Just something to benchmark yourself in.
Right.
Some kind of
Well,
a stretch goal.
I think all entrepreneurs, like, I talk to entrepreneurs,
All day long.
Yeah, that's all I do, actually. I can't, I don't even speak to, like, maybe it's
People.
someone on a
Humans.
plane.
Yeah.
I don't speak to anyone who's not an entrepreneur, which is bizarre. I might say hello to a flight attendant or something like that. But, the reality is that most of the entrepreneurs I speak to around the world, even really successful ones, don't really set big enough goals, in my humble opinion. A lot of times they get mired down in the firefighting of running their company that they're not aspiring to, we set really hard goals. Like, I expect to fail. And then when I fail, I get pissed. I expect to fail because they're obnoxiously hard, but that doesn't mean I want to fail or I hope to fail or failure is even an option. Failure is not an option.
And is that healthy or is that too masochistic and will burn people out? Do you find that kind of absurd goal setting works for every entrepreneur? Does it?
We're not here to make an organic fabric company. We're here to change the world, right? So, I don't think if you're like trying to make a lifestyle kids clothing company that you should be, made from. You
don't need to be on AngelList for that.
Right. Well, not even that. You might want to have a healthy work-life balance in the office and things like that. I work insane hours, but I don't expect everyone on my staff to work insane hours. I would say the average team member in the Founder Institute probably works 10 hours, maybe 12 hours a day. Some work a lot more. I work a lot more, but we don't require like crazy commitment. The reality is that without those big ambitious goals, like, what are you doing with your life? Right. And so I try to say, like, I want to have a big impact. I want to change the world.
So what is the qualifier to come into the Founders Institute? You're not like Techstars where you have to have an idea or a prototype and be incorporated already and have your top 3 founders connected and in sync.
So we look really, you don't even need an idea. You just need to be a person, right? So we make you take a personality test, and then that personality test basically tells us how successful you're going to be.
Yeah.
And it's very accurate. So we just what we do is you take a test. It lasts about an hour.
Yeah.
And then after that test is over, I get a score 1 to 5. We then collect hundreds of data points from peers, from mentors, from the director, and we can evaluate that against the original test. 85% of the time, that original test is exactly right.
Based on what the mentors say. The mentors are that good
and
judges?
And their peers.
Oh, and their peers.
Yeah, so it's like a 360-degree review system. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
If you go in, you take the test, we measure all these attributes, and then we give you a score. Again, it could be, let's say, a 3.69, which is actually a pretty good score out of 5. No one really breaks 4. And so it's really sort of 0 to 4 practically. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people break a 4. So you 369, that's a great score. You go through the program. Each week, you have 5 peers in your working group. They're submitting 2 ratings on you. Mentors submit ratings on you each week. You're gaining more and more rating data. Midway through the program, the test we'll say, again, 369. The average of all the rating we've collected may say 371 or 375.
What is the question you ask people to answer when they're rating their coworkers? Like, is it how good is this?
Peers?
Their peers.
Yeah, well, so we ask them, we rate them in 2 areas, right? What do you think of their idea? 1 to 5, again, 5 being good. And then what do you how are they performing as an entrepreneur in the program? Are they collaborative, helping? Are they working hard, or are they, goofing off? And again, 1 to 5, 1 being bad, 5 being good.
So basically, how focused are they, and how good is their idea?
Progressing, right.
Yeah.
So it's like, and again, this hour-long test, for whatever reason, predicts, it's actually 86% of the time, very accurately, how someone will do in the program.
So there's always this big debate as to what are the characteristics of an entrepreneur.
Well, I know.
And can
There's not a
entrepreneurs,
debate.
can entrepreneurs be made or not?
They sort of.
Okay, so
So I
let's
have the
unpack-
answers to those
Yeah,
questions.
well, that's what we're interested in hearing because people do talk about it, people have opinions on it. I, for one, think you can. I think entrepreneurship is probably defined early in life based on your relationship with your father or mother, but it can be accentuated and taught clearly.
Yeah.
But I do think the majority of people are brought to it at a young age by the examples they see. Am I
Okay.
right or am I wrong?
A little.
Okay.
You're a little right and a little wrong. So
How am I right? How am I wrong?
some of the attributes that make for good entrepreneurs are definitely genetic, period, end of story.
Well, I'm saying more definitive years, like
Right.
formative years.
So, and some of them are, there's the nature versus nurture. So
Yeah.
there's some attributes of entrepreneurs that are definitely genetic. Definitely. So there's something called fluid intelligence. It is a genetic measure. It actually decreases with age. So to some extent, a lot of entrepreneurs have an advantage by being younger. However, some other attributes that are not genetic, such as openness and agreeableness, change with age in other ways, and you become better with age as an entrepreneur. So some are genetic, some are learned. I would say overall, though, it's more genetic than circumstantial.
Really?
I would say that, right, because if you're not really good with if you have a poor fluid intelligence capability, which means fluid intelligence is basically a measure of how quickly you can learn a rule set and apply it.
Yeah.
Right? And so if
How
you're,
quickly you can pick things up.
Right.
Might be a way to say it.
And switching as well. So, I mean, dude, you're switching all the time. Before the show, you're like setting up the set. Then you're checking email. Now you're interviewing. In a minute, you're going to be like in a financial meeting or whatever. And then in an ad meeting, entrepreneurs are switching all the time.
Sure.
And fluid intelligence.
From product to business to design to
Exactly.
hiring to management issues. Sure.
And that's a genetic capability. And so if you don't have it, right, it's going to be challenging for you to be successful because you're going to be super focused on whatever, designing the new homepage.
And then somebody wants to talk about the business
Finance.
model,
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
like, what? Or the HR,
You're like, get the fuck out, I can't talk. Oh, tip jar.
$10 in the jar. Thank you. You can chest it up later.
Yeah.
We'll get you on the square. Just give me a 20. Well, you got one on. You got one.
Yeah, I got one on
You
reserve.
got one on reserve. I'll put that right.
So
on.
the reality is that that's genetic, and so if you don't have that, you're at a major disadvantage.
Yeah.
And some of the other traits are combined. Like openness is a bit of a combo, genetic and learned. So openness is your ability to accurately see the world for what it is, right? So if you're the converse or inverse is closed-minded, you're going to be like, oh, the company's fine. There's no problems. And it's like, there's a lot of problems.
There's always problems.
Yeah, exactly. And
Every company's teetering on death and success at the same time. Is it not true?
pretty well, yes-ish. I mean, some have more teetering more one way than the other. Of
course.
But yeah, if you're not aware of the problems in your business, you're in deep trouble. And sometimes, being closed-minded, it's like you see the world the way you see it, and the world may not look that way at all.
And you're incapable
Yes.
of changing your worldview.
Exactly. To
Which-
match the reality.
If you happen to be right, means you could be a fervent, like hitting the 1 in 100 shot.
Yeah.
Like, and
Well, but you need to have a balance there. You can't be completely closed-minded because literally, these
the
are
world is too fluid.
right. That these are the type of people that have problems if they're
Yeah.
too closed-minded because they're just like the world is they're religious fanatics, things like this. The world is the way they see it. It's like, what? You believe something else? No. You can't even really hire people if you're that closed-minded because you wouldn't be able to work with anyone that didn't see the world the way you did. So,
Yeah. So you have to filter those people out.
Yeah, we do. Actually,
Are those people drawn to entrepreneurship to begin with?
Clarify your question. So
Are they
saying,
drawn to the Founders Institute? Do they apply? Do they fancy themselves capable of doing what it takes to build a successful company?
there are a lot of people who, okay, so mental illness is a problem in the world, and
Sure.
we see it.
A growing problem.
Yeah, I would agree, actually. So, and it's actually differs by culture. Some cultures have more incidents than others. I would say that we don't see a greater share than the percentages would indicate it being in the population apply to the Founder Institute. But we definitely see people apply to the Founder Institute with issues. Now, the reality is that many of them end up being some of the greatest CEOs around, but what we found is a few interesting things. Number one, a lot of the time, almost all the time, some form of mental illness acts as a bit of a glass, not even a bit, acts as a glass ceiling. So you'll rock it up and become really successful.
And then it starts working against you.
Then it starts working, exactly. So
All right,
it's
when
like,
we get back from this commercial break, I want you to tell me, in terms of mental illness, where you think, or mental challenges, how people break through, number one, and number two, which ones are actually an asset and how do you channel them when we get back from this very important message from our partners. Thank you. Hey everybody, this interview is going great, and I just wanted to stop for a quick minute to tell you about a great product and service that we use here at This Week in Startups and the Launch Conference. It's Hiscox Small Business. Yes, getting business insurance is a pain in the neck. You have brokers and problems, and people just sometimes don't even do it because they don't want to have the headache. And it should work like Uber, or it should work like Amazon. You just go online, you figure out what you need, and you get it. Or you take out your phone and you get it, like in the case of Uber. Well, now there is a product that does that, and I love it. It's so simple to use. Hiscox offers customized coverage for a competitive price. And when you buy insurance directly through the insurer instead of an agent, you get tailored coverage. That means all the coverage is customized to your specific needs, and a super simple process. They're not trying to hide information from you. You just go right to the web. You go to Hiscox USA, Hiscox USA, Hiscox USA, Hiscox USA.com. Great website, great web experience. It's a simple process. You get a quote online, and they email you all the docs, and the competitive rates start at just $22.50 a month. And they have a massive passion for customer service. I know a lot of you have already used them. 96% of the customers say they would recommend to a friend. Professional liability, general liability, business owner's policy, workman's comp. Get a quote. Go to hiscoxusa.com/smallbiz. hiscoxusa.com/smallbiz. Great company, great product. And as you know, we have our choice of partners on this program. We only bring on the best. And those are the products that we actually use ourselves. Hiscox we use because it's simple and it's easy, and you don't want to be caught without insurance. If you do get sued, or you have a problem, or somebody gets hurt, God, you can just sleep well at night knowing you spent the $20 or $30 or $40 a month having decent coverage. It's simple. There's no excuses now. I know in the past having to go through one of those smarmy agents was a problem for you. Now you can just do it all on the web, and it's quick and it's easy. It's fun, actually, to just see how the insurance changes based on how much you need. So go ahead and go to hiscoxusa.com/smallbiz. Let's get back to this very important program. Thank you, Hiscox. Hey, welcome back. What an amazing discussion we're having here with Adeo Ressi of the Founders Institute. This is This Week in Startups. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/thisweekin, or on Twitter, twitter.com/TWI Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. On Twitter, I am simply at Jason. Yes, Jason Bateman does not have that. I have it. Haha, Jason Bateman. And I get also Jason Mraz. This poor kid, Jason Mraz, decided that he's got to put his Twitter handle as Jason_Mraz or something. And
the underscore cuts it out or something.
And people don't know how to use Twitter, so they just do Jason space Mraz, and they're like, I love you, I'm yours, I love your songs, and then I just reply back, thanks. All right, when we left, we talked about mental illness and the founder. You do see people applying with mental illness. You do say mental illness can be a ceiling for certain people, but that many of the most successful people are suffering from a mental illness. What are the mental illnesses that you commonly see where people can just it serves them as entrepreneurs, or does it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so
Or do we not know?
Well, I mean, I would say that we don't have as much data on this as we have on other things, and because we've tested about 15 or 20,000, between 15 and 20,000 entrepreneurs, and we've definitely
Or applicants.
Well, right. They think of themselves as entrepreneurs.
Aspiring.
Right, and many of them, well, we've tested also seasoned entrepreneurs as well. And then we don't normally let in people with problems, but we used to. So I have a good sample set. Now, what I would say is that there are three big ones, right, that we get worried about. Pathological deceit.
Lying.
Well, it's pathological, though, so it's not lying. When you go pathological, like, you just are constantly lying.
Right.
And then the second one is maybe there's no order, emotional instability, and it's basically if the stress ratchets up, you crack badly.
Bipolar-ish or something?
It's not bipolar. It's emotional instability.
Uh-huh.
It's basically, again, when stress ratchets up, you literally crack under
You lose
pressure. And then the third one is that we take close looking at is essentially extreme aggression, so predatory aggression, where it's not just enough to win. It's like you got to win and put them down at the same time, and then like their family, right?
So like Bill Gates.
I don't know what, I can't.
No, I mean, Microsoft, when you say predatory aggression, Bill Gates is clearly not like that now. I mean, I'm sort of making a joke here, but Microsoft, that's peak,
They
was
were
known
very
for
aggressive,
being
yes.
aggressive to the point of the Justice Department having to come in and say, like, hey, can you not,
Yeah, I don't know if, I can't answer if Bill.
Yeah, and who knows if Bill Gates is himself, right? So they can't put with that.
It's hard to say, like, and clearly, like, some of the traits here, Steve definitely has some predatory aggressive traits as well.
Steve Jobs was vindictive, in fact. I mean, the way he tried to destroy Flash was confounding to people.
Well, I mean, he wasn't exactly he was a monopolist, the same as Bill Gates.
Absolutely.
And tried to crush competition. If you put the operating system on another machine, your life wasn't really a pleasant place.
Yeah.
But so it's hard to say. I haven't tested them. I don't want to speculate.
Sure.
But I have tested a lot of people who have it, and I've watched them, and they're in the program, and friends of mine, et cetera. I would say of the three, it appears that the deceit seems to be the most easily overcome to achieve success, because it doesn't seem to get in the way as much as the other two. The predatory aggression gets in the way because you just end up like,
Fighting all the time.
Yeah, you're always fighting.
Over nonsense.
Over nonsense, exactly. And then,
I've had to step in the middle of this behavior as an angel investor at times, or other things where people are just fighting.
for no reason.
And I'm like, what exactly are we fighting about here? And they're like, we can't remember. I'm like, if we can't remember, but you remember everything that was said in the heat of the battle. So if you remember everything that was said in the heat of the battle, but you don't remember the cause of the fight.
Why are you fighting?
Can we just get back to work? Because we got a bunch of employees and shareholders that we are, counting on us. And if we can't even remember what we started this fight over, that means it's probably not important.
Well, that brings up an interesting side note. So it turns out we can predict very accurately if co-founders will survive as together. And one of the greatest predictors, 100% of the time, where one co-founder triggers one of these flags and the other one doesn't, they have all broken up. In every example we've seen who've come into the Institute or been outside of the Institute 100% of the time. And there are another almost 100% of the time is if the score variation in their predictive results is very big.
On that 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 of
if one's a 2.6 and one's a 3.7, they're almost guaranteed to break up
why is
as
that?
well. So causality is a good question. I'm
Speculate.
Okay.
Based on anecdotal.
Well, the sort of flagged mental issues versus the non-flagged issues, essentially what happens is one starts flaring up, the other can't deal with it, and they just break up.
Right. Sort of like a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or whatever.
Right.
Just a romantic relationship can happen that way too.
Yeah, and that one's pretty easy to speculate. In terms of the spread, resentment builds among co-founders when people are not rowing at the same speed, when people are not pulling their weight at the same level. Now, if the test, which seems to be a highly accurate prediction of capability, says someone's a 3.7 and someone's a 2.6, in the beginning of a startup, the type of stuff you need to do is not like mental gymnastics. It's
somebody might be like getting an office or picking up lunch
exactly.
or interviewing the receptionist.
Right, exactly. After a while, though, like when you're at the scale of Google, Larry and Sergey are like,
they have to vibe each other.
Right, and they're like making huge multi-billion-dollar decisions, and if one's a 3.7 and the other's a 2.6,
in that case,
the
you have
3.7 guy is like
5.9s.
That's. I don't know if this is the case. You asked me to speculate, but my guess is that as you start to grow,
the higher numbered person feels like resentment towards the lower number person
because they're not pulling their intellectual weight in the business. My guess.
Yeah, the performance isn't there.
Yeah.
What about when you have two people who are mentally aggressive or, both have issues in the sort of list of mental challenges?
So far, we haven't seen that happen. And that's another weird thing. I think what happens is
they're not drawn to each other like magnets?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually think you have certain personality traits where these kind of like super smart but a little off people draw to one another. And it's not like two pluses, it's like a plus and a minus.
Yeah, they have to be collaborative, where one is maybe...
But then they break up, so it's not all that collaborative. They're collaborative again when in the beginning, when there isn't the big decisions to be made, the big stresses to be had. And this is terrible because, the separation of co-founders in the world is probably the single number one cause of early stage failure.
Oh,
by
really?
far.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I think I've heard Paul Graham say that as well.
It's number one by far. Because it's very hard if you have like two people running a business and they break up. It's very hard to keep the ship.
Putting aside selection process, what do you think the best practices are in getting two founders to truly get along? Because you must have to counsel this. They've got their, they get out of Founders Institute, they're incorporated, they raise some money, or I know Founders Institute sometimes feeds Y Combinator or Techstars, so they go on to Techstars, they get funded, but they're not perfectly in sync. What do you guys do to try to sync them up?
Well, we try and, what we not, during the program, we're not worried about syncing them up. We worry about putting them in real world situations where the stress is really high so that they see how they act and see if they're a good fit.
Right.
So a lot of what we try to do is simulate what it's like to run a fast-growing and successful startup in the program without doing hypothetical bullshit, right? Because we could be like, okay, everyone climb the wall, and like climbing the wall is not a simulation of running a startup.
Right.
It might maybe a little stress, but so we try and put them in stressful situations,
like having a presentation or something.
But we have board of directors. Simulation, essentially. You're in a working group of 5 people, and we treat that group, which is oftentimes a diverse group of people with different backgrounds, as your board. And we make you get approval from the board for things that you're doing. And as you know, getting approval from a board can be stressful, especially when you have differing personalities on it. So we put them in those type of situations, and they're stressed, and then if they make it through, we're like, you guys are a good fit. If they don't, then,
They know it.
They know it, exactly.
Yeah, you don't need to really...
Yeah, and I think, by the way, there's a lot of things you can do. So we have a whole methodology.
Take me through what the 12 weeks are like.
Maybe it's better. So I'm working on a book right now, and it's called The Structured Approach. And what's happened in the world is you have things like Eric Ries with Lean and Steve Blank with customer development, and these are great things.
Process,
but they're for products, right? So we said, wait a minute, what's the right thing to do for a company? And what we found, again, in part by luck, is what we call the structured approach, which is you have a path to build a business, right? There's certain things that you have to do before other things on that path, right? You need to have an idea before you have a name. And trust me, that doesn't happen all the time. A lot of people code name their business, then launch it, and it's like not at all related to the name. This happens
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this happens even with seasoned entrepreneurs. So,
Not with this one. I take branding seriously.
well, oink with
Yeah. Yeah, what was that about with Kevin Rose? Yeah.
Well, he was like in milk. He was just
Yeah.
fidgeting around with different ideas and names and come up, code names, and then they become products. So come up with your idea, name the business.
He nailed it with Dig, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, the idea is that there's this path, right? And certain decisions need to be made before other decisions. The other thing is that then on that path, you want to push yourself, right? Because if you want to create artificial forcing functions, because you could sit around and research something for 3 years,
Sure.
right, and then be like, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and the opportunity's over.
Right, exactly.
There's
So
17 companies in the space.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to be like Johnny on the spot. And I would say most of the things at the beginning of the company shouldn't take you more than 2 weeks to do all in, right? And you should do it in sequence. And then
So like the Lean Startup, your book will outline this.
yeah, and then the last sort of big concept I would say is sort of what I would call the kill. You're not see what most entrepreneurs do, which is actually the wrong thing. What almost everyone does is they look for reasons why to do something, right? What you really should do is look for reasons why not to do something.
Example.
Well, okay, like there are infinite number of examples. Like okay, I want to start a social media marketing thing for stores. So I go and interview stores, and I'm like, if I created a social media marketing thing for your store, would you use it? And they're like, sure. It's like, and so they're asking positive reinforcing questions,
Yeah.
and they keep getting positive reinforcement, and then they're like, I've got to do this. What you really should be doing is looking at why you shouldn't do it. So conversely, you could say, hey, customer, if I had a screen here and it had a smiley face or a frowny face, would you click it? Why? You want to look for the no,
Right.
not the yes.
Right.
You want to convince yourself that it's a bad idea, not
Yeah.
that it's a good idea. And when
Maybe-
you run out of the reasonings that, hey, maybe this is a good idea after all, then go for it.
So these are the objections or the things that could interfere with the business's success ultimately.
Right. I mean, you make it seem right now like it's logical. I meet hundreds of entrepreneurs a week, and they're all giving me the things they found that are positive reinforcing.
Yeah.
And
It's delusional in a way, which is an attribute that I would think is good for entrepreneurs a little bit, because if you're not delusional to a certain extent, you will not take on the challenge. So where is delusional is it virtuous or is it dangerous?
Okay, let's talk about a mutual friend of ours, Elon, here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elon Musk, who you were roommates with in college.
Yeah, we flew around the world to launch SpaceX and met with every space company in the world, and we were looking at our basic assumption is we can't do this. It would be crazy. Prove that is right. Prove that it's impossible.
It's impossible to create a rocket company.
Right. Prove to us that there's no way that two dudes can make a space company. And in fact, we found, there is a way that people can build a space company. And so we were looking for the no, not for the yes. And so he was never, but it's a big vision. So there's a difference between having a big vision and being delusional, right? Delusional's, doing the same thing twice and continuing to fail.
Right.
Each time. Like, I failed once, I failed twice.
Well, to a certain extent, he did that with setting the rockets up. Was that not delusional to send up the third or fourth when the first and second up, or third all spiraled and blew up?
But just to use that as
or is that just huge balls?
Well, that's not it.
Is that just courage?
Rockets fail a lot.
Yeah.
3 or 4 failures is actually kind of non-normal. It's a small number of failures.
Yeah.
The Delta 2 is basically a lot of Delta 1s blew up.
Yeah.
And then they're like, suddenly they're not blowing up. It's the Delta 2. It's like, and so what they did is they basically reset the clock by calling the Delta 1 the Delta 2.
Genius.
And then the Delta 2 had a very good
Track record.
Right. So,
Yeah.
rockets blow up a lot. So 2 or 3 failures in the world of rockets is actually amazing. Like
Right.
I think that's a little bit of a different example.
Yeah,
but
I think so. So this idea of proving why this should not exist in the world, or all the objections, or all the challenges, how does that exactly help you?
Well, so again, maybe to use the rocket thing again, if you know that rockets blow up a lot and you blow up 2 times, you're not going to cry your eyes out and throw in the towel, because that's what rockets do. Similarly with your business, knowing what the real problems are, knowing what the real objections in the market are, gives you that sort of healthy view on what you need to focus on, right? So again, I think people have delusional sense of what they're trying to do because they haven't done enough deep research, and they're getting so much positive reinforcement by asking the wrong questions that they just continue to work on something that has no shot of being successful.
Yeah, I just kind of find that as like incredibly naive today, that there are so many people who fancy themselves entrepreneurs. And this is going to lead to a question. Entrepreneurship, because of the Founders Institute, where you need to basically have a pulse and a desire to be an entrepreneur, Y Combinator, Techstars, and the 1,000 people who've copied them, Angel List, Launch Festival, and a million other, all the different hackathons going on. All of this activity has drawn so many people to create companies. And the quality overall has gone up because the tools are better. The costs have gone down because the tools are cheaper. And all the information is being shared. But I still find that a lot of these folks should not be entrepreneurs. Am I wrong or am I right? And you're kind of biased in this because you're building something at scale.
No. I mean, first of all, I'll never lie.
Right.
Like, if I think something, I'm not going to just sit here and tell you.
Well, I mean, you're launching
else.
something at such a large scale, but it is across multiple continents and obviously dozens of countries. So
we take that very seriously, right? I mean, I think about 2% of the human population is probably cut out and has the attributes to be a great entrepreneur. And if 2% of the human population...
That's 6 million Americans.
Right. We're building really amazing businesses, the world would be a better place. Now, what I think happens, to your point, is that you're getting... because of the buzz and the hype and all the other stuff, you're actually not, not all of the 2% is in the game. You've got a lot of people who are not probably cut out to be good entrepreneurs.
People who should be spectators or parts of teams.
Yes, who are out there creating companies. And I think some of them will be successful just because of the law of large numbers, but a lot of them will fail. And that's unfortunate. I think we have to, as humanity, put our chips, so to speak, on the best possible bet, and we should bet on the people who are in the best position to win, right? And so if we do, the world will, I think that within the next 10 years, certainly maybe even the next 5 years, that you will have Facebook-grade companies coming out of multiple geographies around the world, not just Silicon Valley. And right now, today, you're only getting Facebook-grade companies out of Silicon Valley. You got Groupon out of Chicago and maybe Tumblr or one or two others out in New York, but it's pretty much...
Etsy, Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's pretty much...
They're not quite Facebooks, but if you put them all together, they might be a half a Facebook.
Yeah, but it's pretty much concentrated right here. Within
Twitter.
10 years, yeah, exactly. Or right here, we're in LA, but north of here.
Yeah.
But within 10 years, you're going to see more and more big ideas,
Yeah,
big
we're seeing
companies.
$10 billion companies, but not $100 billion companies outside of the Valley.
And in China, you're
Oh, in
starting
China,
to.
certainly, yeah.
But you're going to see that more and more and more. You're going to Russia. You're going to see it in
Yandex,
Indonesia, or Asia Pacific region.
Not Europe.
Europe is a different subject. I mean, to some extent, you're subject to demography and macroeconomics. So GDP growth in Europe is
Negative. Straight, flat.
As of this morning, it's been announced that they're basically all the Eurozone is in recession. Conversely, like much of the Middle East has a very young demographic, fast-growing populations, South America, Asia Pacific. So you're going to see huge, maybe not quite 100 billion, but certainly 20, 50 billion technology companies coming out of those regions for sure. For sure. So we want to be there. And we want to find.
But you're not as interested in Europe.
That's not. I mean, I like Europe. I think it's a great market. It
sucks to be an entrepreneur there, though. I mean, the regulations and the tax basis and the snooty way that the French or the pessimistic way that the British. They're actually snide towards entrepreneurs in some of those cities and countries. You must have experienced it.
We have 16 chapters in Europe, so
okay.
I have.
Which is the highest performing, Berlin or Stockholm?
Well, Berlin is probably the second city to Silicon Valley in the world in terms of an ecosystem today.
Really?
I would say Silicon Valley is number one and Berlin is number two for sure. If you leave out China, China is sort of such an anomaly in and of itself that, and it's closed.
It's insular, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard to judge it.
It's not like anybody's using
Frankly, if China does currency restrictions, or loosens, I should say, the currency restrictions, the world will be a much richer place because basically we've been buying plastic trinkets and shipping them capital that they're pumping into real estate. The second the curtain lifts a little bit on the currency controls, hundreds of billions of dollars are going to flow out of that country faster than you can blink an eye. And my guess is startup investing will go into like insanity mode. But that's an aside. So Europe, look, we were not in a great shape when 2008 and 2009, we were far worse hit than most other economies. So by comparison, Europe's had almost like a couple waves of lesser recessions than we got hit with. Yeah. So, it's hard to compare. So I think the way Europe's going to get out of this mess is by entrepreneurship. There's a lot of setbacks, but there's a lot of advantages too. You have a unified market in Europe because of the European Union. So you don't have to incorporate in France. You can incorporate in UK. It's perfectly fine and operate in France, and you don't need to do a local subsidiary or anything. So that's, if you're a smart entrepreneur in Europe right now and you want to do things right, you don't have to get bogged down in all the crap.
You just got to be careful where you set up, I think, because of the human resources and human capital issues as well.
But they're going to come around too. I mean, they can't leave it the way it is in some of these countries, like in Italy and France. They're not inspiring entrepreneurs. So what happens?
Inspiring them to leave.
Well, they're inspiring them.
Louis ran.
Yeah, they are leaving. Yes, well, I know. They're more
75% tax rate proposed in France.
There are more great French mentors in Silicon Valley who started out in our Paris chapter and moved. But I mean,
they're leaving en masse.
Yes, which is your French. But I'm not worried about Europe. I actually think that it's a beautiful place to live.
Counts for something.
They got really smart people.
Yeah, great education system.
And they care.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, so it's like they put up a wall and then they give a subsidy. They put up a wall and then they give a subsidy. So if you're a European company looking to start, you have like hurdles and subsidies.
And gifts.
Hurdles.
Why don't
and
they just make it fluid? It makes no sense.
I know it's kind of crazy. It's like jump over the hurdle and you'll get the subsidy.
Yeah.
And so,
No, I mean, I remember people telling me about Canada as well and Australia. Like, hey, open up there. It's going to be really a pain in the ass to open up a wing there, and you're going to have to pay like this incredible taxes. But we're going to give you
money, right?
$1 for every dollar you spend. And I'm like, but it's going to cost me $1 for every dollar I spend. So
Right.
all you're doing is even me out. In which case, I'm just staying here in America.
It's pretty much what they do in Europe as well.
Here's $1 for every dollar you spend inefficiently.
More like here's $1.50 for every dollar you spend, but you have to spend the dollar up front. So you have to do it like
and it's like the dollar was just spent, at 3 times less efficiency than it would have been here in the United States.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
But you can't come here, by the way, anymore. Like
yeah,
getting a visa to move here.
You and I
is
were
like,
talking about this on email earlier today. It's simply not worth it to hire
a foreigner.
a foreigner. Is that basically what it's come to? It's a lot of trouble, and there's so few of these visas.
I know. It's like it's sad, Jason. And you know what? I live in this double world today because I'm live in America. I have a company in America. I'm incorporated in America.
But you travel constantly.
But we operate in 50 cities around the world, right? 40-something cities around the world. The brain drain. So if you look at the cities as a pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
The top of the pyramid's cut off everywhere in the world. Like the best of the best of the best of the best. They have lots of money.
The 1% of the 1%.
The 1% of the 1%, they're like, boom, out. They move to Silicon Valley. They start their company. They can invest their own money in it. And then they get the visa.
Because if they invest $1 million, they get a visa? Is that what
it
depends.
Like it depends on the number. Yeah, so there's an amount that you have to invest. I think it's $1 million or it's $250 per with a certain number of hires. But anyway, if you have a lot of money, it's very easy to start a company and get a visa. Now, getting the green card's a whole other thing. But so they've left. They're gone. So the very top of the pyramid, the head of the market's been cut off. And then you have the lower rungs that are still there. So they've lost the top guys.
Elite leadership.
Being able to help them who've all moved here, which is kind of sad in one thing.
Yeah.
God forbid, in a weird way, if we open up the floodgates, what's just going to happen is as we open the floodgates, more and more of the
now
top,
we go from the 1% of the 1% to the full-on 1%.
Right.
And now we take 1% brain drain out of Indonesia or Brazil or
and all these
wherever.
Countries are like, we want to create a Silicon Valley. Well, if America loosens its immigration policies,
that's
I can say with 100% certainty that the probability of Ireland or Russia or fill in the blank country
Shanghai
building a Silicon Valley will be
Sao Paulo.
zero because your top of the pyramid will move.
So then you're just all B players.
It's not that they're B players, right? You have A players that need to move up, and the best way to move up is to learn from the A players.
Right.
Right.
So
but
even
if
the path to
players,
the path to A is to follow the A's.
Right. And if they're all gone.
Right. Like if Loic was going to be the mentor in Paris, and Loic is like, you know what? I'm here with my kids, and we're going. That's it. We're in school here, and we're never
out.
going back to Paris. We're out.
To be fair, Paris is a great example of that.
They drove everybody out.
They drove everybody out. I mean, they
Gerard Depardieu.
They put the taxes so high that it made the barriers to going into any other country relatively
low.
They
drove their one actor out. Gerard Depardieu. He's gone.
But you think it's the problem is, imagine if there was like a 75% capital gains
That'd be like
tax.
us losing Brad Pitt or George Clooney. They lost Depardieu, and we would lose Clooney. Can you imagine if we lost Clooney to Paris and we got Depardieu in return? What a bum deal that would be. Where do you see the Founders Institute in 5 years? You're 4 years in. Give me the 10-year anniversary. And congratulations, by the way, on coming to your 4-year anniversary.
Yeah, it came by fast. I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, look, we right now have a humblingly awesome portfolio. It's hard, it's so big that we don't have the same type of detailed statistics as, let's say,
Techstars, which they publish.
Yeah, no, we have that. We have close to what Techstars does, but not, let's say, of what a venture fund does.
Do you publicly put them out there like Techstars does?
We as
think
best we can. We had our 6th exit yesterday.
Congrats. Who was that?
It was a company called Shopalize. It was announced yesterday. It happened a few days ago. It was under 10. We've had a bunch of under $10 million exits. And,
Singles.
Yeah, but listen. The founders have walked away millionaires, right?
Great.
And that's great. And we've gotten a little money back.
And what do you guys get? 2 or 3%?
We get about. It depends on how
5 or
much
6%?
financing they have, but it's 3.5%.
Okay, so it's
but I would
half
say
of what Y Combinator gets.
Yeah, about half. If you aggregate the value of the companies we've created, it's north of $5 billion. And, so that's not bad. They've created close to 10,000 jobs, maybe a little more at this point. And, so in 10 years' time, I'd like to see the Founder Institute creating somewhere around 25,000 jobs a year. And we're looking at shifting from a geographic and volume of company milestone or a money raised or exit value. To us, that doesn't matter. If we're changing the world, we're creating jobs, right? And so if we're creating 25,000 jobs a year, that seems like a meaningful
It's set up as a
contribution.
for-profit company.
Yes.
Do you have offers from governments, or do these foreign governments, are they paying you to start Founders Institutes or underwriting them in some cases? I would think they should.
Yeah, they do. But what we do, I'm about to, hopefully this year, it's actually more complicated than it sounds. I'm going to put all the equity of the Founder Institute in a trust, right? And the trust will be designed to last for as long as possible, right? So we're going to base it on some of the rules that the Stanford Trust has, and we've been working and researching that and trying to figure that one out. So we're putting the Founder Institute into a trust.
Got it.
And it will continue to be a for-profit. In terms of the government subsidies, so Chile and Colombia and Singapore, we have very close relationships with the government. They will help the Founder Institute, fund the Founder Institute. What we'll normally do in those situations is set up a local subsidiary, either it's a nonprofit or something like that. They will give them the license to run the Founder Institute, and then the government will fund that.
Got it.
And it's been great. I mean, we're having a huge impact in the country of Colombia. We have 2 chapters, probably the biggest enrollment. I don't want to, it's not done yet. Actually, the admissions close this week, and we'll have the biggest class in history, it looks like. And
Now, most people don't make it out of the Founders Institute. That was something you had told me. Most of the founders quit by the end.
Yeah, about 60%.
Okay, so that's the majority, but not the overwhelming majority.
Yeah.
But the majority wind up quitting. That's by design. You have a very open process to let people in. But you.
Well, I mean, it's still hard to get in.
So it is still hard to get in.
Yeah, depending on, we have a minimum threshold to get in, right? And then depending on the volume of applicants, it can waiver the amount, just the percentage, because there's limits in class size, right? So it ranges from about 10 to 25%. So in a big city like Silicon Valley or San Francisco, of a few hundred applicants, and we might let in 10%. In a smaller location like Medellin, we may get 100 applicants, so it will be closer to 25%. And then 60% a tryout.
So you expect 10 to make it to the end?
We
12.
will graduate between 8 and 20 companies per cohort. And what we do is we set up forcing functions, right? So we create situations where the founder really has to decide, is this right for me? Not just the program, but like the entrepreneurial lifestyle, the idea, everything. So like in the first week, we ratchet up the workload, and then we're like, if you drop out, refund, no hard feelings, and we love you. Just
what is it, $1,000 to go to the institute, or $500?
It depends. Actually, in Medellin, it's $200. In Malaysia, it's $320. In America, it's like $995. The price does go to cover expenses, and expenses vary based on geography. But the other thing is, like, it's part of your commitment, because we're pushing you, right? And if it's free, you just are like, too hard, quit.
Yeah.
And
but if you're like, I paid $1,000 for 12 weeks, that's $100. So it's $80 a week.
well, it's 16 weeks, but yeah. So
Right, okay, so
yeah,
whatever,
but whatever, it's
$70
like
a week.
$60 a week. Actually, it's cheap. It's
nothing.
But people are like, they get like.
It's a mental thing.
Yeah, the guy, Gabe Zickerman, I don't know, have you had Gabe on the show?
No.
Oh, he's great. He's one of our directors in New York. He coined the term gamification. So we've actually thought through gamifying a lot of the processes, creating these forcing functions. We make you commit, but then we like give you a refund in the beginning if you change your mind, and
Right.
then we push you really hard, and we're constantly trying to test you to see if you can build something great.
Yeah.
And it works. Do you know that 90% of all the companies we've created worldwide are still alive, which is really
bizarre.
and I'm not even talking. I'm like, we measure this. We keep very close track. Companies are required to inform us if they go out of
What
business.
percentage actually get to an A round? So of the 800 companies, how many bona fide A rounds from a significant
Not that
from a
many.
venture
Like
firm?
it's a few percentage point under 10.
So
Like
dozens?
7-10%, something like that. So.
Oh, so you think there's 50 of them who've gotten venture
Oh yeah,
fund
yeah.
A rounds?
I mean, like almost 100% of our graduates in Berlin have gotten to an A round.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very market dependent, right?
But you've also had some disasters, right? Some cities have blown up.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know what that means, but what
Like some cities, like early on in the program, you had expanded so quickly
Yeah.
that some of the vibe was it's just too quick. It wasn't as organized, or maybe not as good leaders. You did have some flameouts, I remember.
Yes, we've had. So
What did you
we've
learn
had,
from those?
Well, so
Because you're not perfect either, right? I mean, you guys expanded so
no.
quickly as a startup.
I'm definitely not. I'm
Well, I'm not asking if Adeo's not perfect. I know that. I'm asking about Adeo's company.
I would say that, like, I've had a flame out semester where I was too hard, right? So we're always testing, like, what's too hard, what's too easy, right? Because you got to level.
The gamification is too hard. People don't like playing the game.
Right, exactly. And
It's got to be in that flow zone.
you could actually make it too hard,
Yeah.
and then
Or too easy.
or too easy, right? So we're constantly toying around. So I wouldn't say like,
What was the time you did it too hard? Tell me about that.
oh well,
Give me the what happened. The thing that's like, wow, that's embarrassing.
yeah,
Or,
it
boy,
was
did I F
it
that
was,
up.
and let me apologize.
No, this is. I
to
mean, this
everyone
makes you real.
involved. I really was too hard. So what happened was it was a series of sort of small mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and then that ended up creating a big mistake. So we had started the program late in the year, like December, and we had run the early part of the program and taken a big 3-week Christmas and New Year's break. So when people got back, they had just started this program,
Yeah.
and they basically, I have a tip, I fucked off
Yeah.
for the holidays,
Yeah.
and came back and just weren't prepared. Now, I wasn't actually I was a co-director, and I was letting the director get his feet, and he came to me, he's like, Adeo, these guys aren't ready. We've got a mentor idea review in a week. You need to come in and be a
Help.
hard ass.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'll come in and be tough. And I was a little too tough.
And what, they all quit? You lost a lot?
Well, sort of, right? What happened was I created a situation where morale started to sour. And what ended up
That is the hard part right now. You go too hard and you get
I was
morale.
too hard. I was
And what
definitely
happened?
too hard.
Soured?
Well, yeah, morale. So what happened was, specifically, before the mentor idea review, I came in and I said, guys, I've been told you didn't prepare enough over the holidays. I've been looking; it's pretty clear. You need to prepare. This isn't like the minor leagues. This is the NBA, and this isn't the NBA. This is the playoffs.
Yeah.
Did you work like it was the playoffs over the holidays? And they all raised their hand. And I'm like, well, if you work like it was the playoffs over the holidays, let's do what we call do or die hot seats. And if you get up here and you pitch your business and you get a 2 or below average, you're out. Right on the spot. We just kick you right out.
Whoa.
And 7 of 14 people got kicked out that night.
That's hard.
So that didn't.
Is there any way to get back in the game? No reset button? Have a
Yeah,
reset
that
button.
was a bit of a. So look, I'm not
Is that
proud.
because you're so hard on yourself that you believe that other people want you to be that hard on them?
I'm not actually.
You are hard on yourself.
I am hard on myself, but
You're brutal on yourself.
nah, I'm not. Well, I might be. I'm not brutal on myself. I think that's a little extreme. Look, I want the best for these guys, and the world is hard. And if they all raised their hand, they literally all raised their hand and said, I practice like it's the NBA
Right.
playoffs. And I'm like, great. Well, then it is the NBA playoffs. And
Let's go.
Let's go, right?
Gloves are off.
So, and in hindsight, I know they don't know what the startup NBA playoffs are like. So
These are neophytes.
Right. It's like, if you're a kid and you're like, you want to be in the NBA? It's like, yes. But in fact, maybe they don't know.
Yeah, then they go in and LeBron James runs them over. And
Right.
got a bloody nose.
don't
It's not
right.
so much fun
Yeah,
getting dunked on by the king.
But right, exactly. They don't know what they don't know. So that was a little mean on my part. And I do feel bad about this today. But to be honest, let's say that was a 10 level difficulty. We do try and keep it at a 8 or 9 level difficulty, but I think without going too far.
Normal difficulty.
No, I would say extra hard. 8 or 9 out of 10 is what
okay.
we try to keep it at.
Right.
And
hard. Extra hard would be the 10, yeah.
Right, 10, but not 10, right?
Right.
And there was an example of a 10. And then what happened is the morale just started
Demolished.
getting worse, and then people were not happy, and it makes it hard. So a lot of the program, ironically, isn't what happens in the room. It's what happens among the people, because we have super smart. Keep in mind, we're testing these people. These are like the
Yeah, they
top.
won their way in, so they're going to network with each other. They're going to kibitz, and they're going to talk about what they like or don't. They could lead a mini revolt, or they could influence each other. You've had the mini revolts.
Oh yeah, we have mini revolts all the time. We pretty much know what causes them now. Perceived injustice. So let me take a step back about so there's a really bizarre phenomenon that happens around the world. It almost makes no sense. The rating is homogenized. A 6-level mentor in Israel is a 6-level mentor in Vietnam, is a 6-level mentor in
Which means
Silicon
bad.
Valley. 6 is kind of bad. A 9-level mentor in Silicon Valley.
Like me.
You are 9 level. Is 9 in Vietnam? Is 9? And you would say, well, how is that possible?
Yeah.
How come? Maybe you're a 9 everywhere in the world, but
Sure.
why is a 6 everywhere in the world, or why is a 6 in Silicon Valley not a 9 in Vietnam?
Right.
It turns out
That's
that
a great question.
It is, and
Because wouldn't a 6 in the U.S., if the U.S. is double the market or 3 times the market of Chile,
Right.
be
a 9 somewhere else?
24 and 18?
Right. Well, it turns out,
Yeah.
this is the only thesis we have,
Okay.
that because the caliber of person in the program is so homogenized around the world, right?
So you're getting the cream of the crop.
They're evaluating the mentors against themselves, and when you look at the people around the world, the quality consistencies in a very narrow spread.
Got it.
So
because you're picking well in each city, they're going to be voting similar in each city.
correct.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's how we see, and that's a bizarre. So it creates this interesting dynamic. So you were asking a question
Yeah.
about the idea there is that with the mentors being consistent and rated around the world, and the founders of a consistent quality around the world, we do have these scenarios where they band together and create revolts every once
What
in
is that?
a
If they
while.
get 3 6s in a row, they're just like, what's going on here? These people are not good enough, the mentors?
Right.
They
Well,
get
if-
3
if-
9s in a row, you can't go wrong. I mean, that's
You
why
actually
Commodore
nailed it
secret.
on the head. If we have 3 bad sessions in a row, we have what's called semester. We haven't had this happen but twice, because we figured it out pretty quick. We're
Yeah.
like, what was the causality?
Yeah.
3 bad sessions in a row. They're like, it's not worth my time showing up.
If you're not going to bring it.
Right, so we automate now messaging. It's like alert, bad session, need to fix, and like I
they
will
vote
fly in before we go to a 3rd session in a row.
You'll make sure it's a 9.
Oh yeah, I'll bring in the big guns.
Yeah,
from
Aaron
around the world,
Patzer,
right?
Jason Calacanis,
I'll be like
Tony Hsieh.
Yeah, I'll bring in big guns. If we're on 2 6 sessions in a row, you
DEF
better
CON
believe
4.
that like third session will be good.
I love it.
So there are other perceived injustices. If we're really unfair with deadlines, like sometimes in some countries.
So these are freedom fighters. Yeah, that makes sense. Entrepreneurs are like, if they feel there's a perceived injustice, they're going to go to bat. Take me to the first night of Founders Institute.
You were there.
Was that the first or second? I thought it was
That
the
was the
second.
first night.
Was it really? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So take me to the first night. What was it like when you came in that room at Stanford?
I was going to die. I mean, this is, by the way, the story of the Founder Institute. It's probably the story of every great company as well. So, it's just like the house is on fire. Nothing's working. Internet wasn't working. We were live streaming. Live streaming wasn't working.
Nothing.
So internet wasn't working.
Yeah.
Live streaming wasn't working. Mentors were late. I think you were on time. Other mentors were late. Founders were late.
Nobody could find the building.
No one could find. I mean,
I was all over campus. Like, where is this goddamn room? I'm trying to find a classroom on Stanford's campus. It's like, really?
Exactly.
No signs. Nobody working for you.
You could put signs, but Stanford campus is the size of like a small.
You were
town.
not organized. You had no staff.
Yeah, I mean,
had
there
your
was
wife.
every conceivable problem. Clock is ticking down, and then whatever it was, like it just happened on time.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best. I mean, it was one of the best experiences that first session of my life. And it was like from the pit of despair of like I'm like sweating. I'm like,
Yeah, am I going to pull this off?
right? And then
You know what?
But that's the way it is every time.
That's every time I've ever run an event in my life, I have a moment where I look at those empty chairs and I say to myself, I hope people are sitting in those chairs in an hour. Every time. I've been doing it for 20 goddamn years. From the first Silicon Alley Meet the Alley at Pseudo's Loft in 1996, when I did the first event I ever held, I looked at those chairs and said, I wonder if anybody will come. And it was
Yeah.
packed. And every event I've ever done, packed. But even last year's launch festival with 6,000 people, that morning.
That was amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I look out at those chairs. Well, I'm trying to do like big stretch goals. I look out and I just have that moment. And you know what happens is, I find the number of seconds, the duration of the moment of panic just gets much shorter.
Yeah.
So I just have this moment where I look out and I go, I wonder if people are going to come. And I say, you know what? We put on a hell of a show. People are going to come.
Yeah. And by the way, that was fantastic.
We put on a hell of a show. People are going to come. We got a reputation for putting on a hell of a show.
Yeah.
People
Well,
are going to come.
I think in business, right, you're always going to have that like freak out moment, and
Yeah.
then it all just comes together. So we were like,
And nobody
literally-
notices the things you're freaking out about.
Oh yeah, of course. And by the way, this is around the world now because we're in 50 cities. So I have these conversations all the time with directors like, I don't have that. They're like freaking out. I'm like, don't worry. It like for whatever reason. It just with us we have like I'm telling you, I think we're lucky beyond belief because we could have spent a lot more time planning this stuff and it might not have worked out as well as it did. Every time there's always something that's not perfectly right. We're constantly scrambling to make sure everything's right, and it always works out.
You know what? When hard work meets intent, like deliberate intent, things work out.
Yeah.
Hard work plus intent equals success. That's
Yeah.
as best as I can tell. And
Yeah.
when I see you struggling and working on this project, and I've been watching you for 4 years, and I was there at the inception, I just see hard work and just pure intent.
Oh,
And
yeah.
You know what? When that happens, it's all going to work out at the end. Even if you have a couple of cities that implode or revolts, or the government decides they want to be a dictatorship or whatever, in the
We've
middle of
had
the process.
terrorist attacks, not on the institute, but nearby where we were hosting facility sessions. So,
All right. Now, what did I tell you when I got out of? I called you, or I was talking to you when I got out of. Maybe it was. Maybe we were at Antonio's Nut House after the first Founders Institute. What was the first thing I said to you?
You want to buy half the company for 50 grand,
100.
100 grand.
100 grand. I knew.
That would have been a really smart thing.
Well, how much do you think it's worth now? 50 million? Who cares? You don't care.
I know it's not for the money. I
Right.
don't care. In fact, it will never be for the money.
Well, you can't sell it. I mean, it's like a movement.
I would never look. It's never going to be about the money.
Well, it could be about Stanford. It could be like who could possibly buy it? Like Stanford or Techstars? You could merge.
No. It's never going to be sold. It's
What about
gonna
a fund? Where's the fund? I have a fund now. Where's your fund? Why aren't you investing money? That's what everybody needs is money. Everybody says you give them the education, but you don't give them money. Where's your fund?
What fun?
You can't say you're fundraising, but you can't say.
I mean, look. What
You've been
are you
offered-
asking, Jason?
You've been offered. You've been offered for almost as many years as the Founders Institute has existed to have a fund. You have declined thus far. Why have you declined thus far?
Well, okay, so there's a bit of an oxymoron for me to launch a fund because I run the funded, which is, and that is sufficient. I still own it and it's there, but it's the funds have corrected
It's the Zagat
themselves.
of venture
Right,
funds.
and the reality is, at this point, I don't think there's the same brand issue.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really cares about the funded. It like served its purpose.
It served its purpose, exactly.
Yeah, VCs behave much better because of it.
I think if I turned it off, bad behavior would creep back quickly.
But even just now with social media and
Yeah,
entrepreneur
yeah.
empowerment, but it was one of the first entrepreneurial empowerment.
It set the record
devices.
straight.
Yeah.
So the reason, look,
I wrote some good reviews on there.
I have a problem. I'm too nice, and by the way, no one thinks that. So this is a great oxymoron of the world. No one would be like,
I think
"That was a
you're.
little
I think
too
you
nice."
are. I don't think you're cutthroat enough on a business level. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm not exactly. It's not that I'm too nice. I'm not cutthroat enough on a business level. And
Yeah.
so how that manifests itself is I don't believe in picking winners. I believe in helping people achieve their potential. Because picking winners is, in my view, a little bit cutthroat. You're like, you're better than him or she's better than that person. I believe in setting up a system that lets the good people get recognized and achieve greatness. Now, if I could take that type of principle and build a fund upon it, I might.
Are you not though?
But I
Picking
don't
winners by building a scoring system that scores on a weekly basis how entrepreneurs are doing and testing them. You are scoring them, so the score is picking the winner. All you have to do is draft on the score.
Right, well, I'm creating a platform
Yes.
for great people to achieve greatness, right?
And what if
and
what if the top 20%, based on the platforms?
Yeah, I mean,
voting.
obviously-
then we're qualified to get the first shot at a fund.
It would that
Seems
that is
logical to me.
Yeah, that is obviously. So look, let
Then
me.
you're not picking it; the numbers are picking it.
Yes, and let's even get more. Let's erase reality for a minute
Sure.
and go into like newbie entrepreneur reality moment. So I have a thesis.
Mm-hmm.
The thesis is that I can take 3 variables, right,
Okay.
and then get a 4th variable. Okay, the first variable is the predictive average. So the second variable is the number of people that comprise the predictive average. And then the third variable is the location. So
Okay.
let's give an example. 10 entrepreneurs in New York City rated an average 3.2 out of 5. So with those 3 things, I can get a 4th thing, which would be, and I actually bet that I can. I bet that I can get a pretty good aggregate value of company, liquidity or whatever you want to call it, or valuation.
Exit events.
Right. So I bet like if you take those 3 variables, it might be like $10 billion in company value creation. Now, if that proves to be plus or minus with some margin of error, right?
Sure.
So and maybe there's a 4th variable
And the
that
bigger the sample size, less margin.
right,
Fair.
and I bet that there's a 4th variable that I don't know yet, or a 5th variable to get to the valuation. But if I can do that, which I think we can, that is crazy. Because then you could theoretically bank finance startups because you say, look, we've got this pool. We have a high degree of statistical certainty built over 50 years that says they're going to be worth X billion dollars. That's like financeable like real estate or a bridge or our physical assets. So I think we're actually pioneering the ability to value intellectual assets in the present. Factoring out all outcomes in the future.
That's a great place for us to take a moment and thank Adeo Ressi for being on This Week in Startups. He is the CEO and founder of thefounderinstitute.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Adeo Ressi. And you can follow the Founder Institute at FI, I believe.
At Founding.
At Founding, okay. At Founding. And there are 40 cities and growing, so go to thefoundersinstitute.com and figure out how to apply.
At any time of
Founding.
day or night, we probably are accepting applications in 10 or 15 cities, probably a city near you.
I highly recommend it. People have asked me if I recommend it. People ask me, is it worth the money to pay to go? Is it not payola? And I said, no, it's a course. If you pay for a course, that's perfectly legit to pay for. You're going to learn.
Yeah.
It's not like you're paying, like to get in front of angel investors like that. It's different.
No.
You're paying for a course.
I mean,
and you're paying, all that money just goes to rent the space and buy the donuts.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So you know what's
and coordinate it and do the voting and build the platform. So everybody relax about that.
For a small amount of money, the other thing that people forget is like how often is it that you go and meet at CEOs that you've aspired to, and like from Phil Libin of Evernote to down here Scott Painter of Zag to like all the great minds.
People breaking clipboards. I famously broke a clipboard at that.
I still have the piece of the clipboard you
really?
threw. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a momentum.
Well, people were not. You told me that they have to understand how hard it is. I remember you telling me like they don't understand how hard it is. So I just basically was trying to get them to understand how hard it was, and I was banging the plastic clipboard you gave me.
And you broke it.
And then I just threw it on the ground like you have to believe how hard this is going to be. You're ready, and it just shattered. Shattered the clipboard. And Adeo has been shattering clipboards ever since at the Founders Institute. Thank you to my sponsors and partners on the program. Thanks to Brandis for making the show technically flawless. Thanks to Jason DeMont for being the CEO of the launch company, the festival, and This Week in Startups, which is part of it, and Kieran Kalia for producing the show, Kyle for executive assisting and doing the chat room, I believe, and making sure everything's perfect. Thank you. I don't even know if how else should I thank you to. Anyway, whatever.
All your great listeners and viewers.
God, thank you to all my great listeners and viewers. Just go right down the list. At Jason, you can follow at This Week in Startups. I'm sorry, TWI Startups, and go to youtube.com/thisweekin and go to thisweekin.com. All right, it's been an amazing episode number 355 with Adeo Ressi. Adeo, thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, Jason.
See you next time.